Welcome, everyone, to the Sporting Chance podcast. I'm Aaron Kincaid.
And I'm Casey Everett.
And this podcast is brought to you by North Mountain Goshawks. Holla at your boy, Seth Roy, for all of your parent, a.k.a. chamber-raised goshawks. And he might even have an imprint for you if you ask nicely. Check him out on northmountaingoshawks.com.
And also, this podcast is brought to you by Midnight Falconry Supplies, makers of the tightest rated equipment on the market. You can reach Richard Moats, the owner, on Instagram, Facebook, or at his website at www.midnightfalconrysupplies.com.
And also, Ashley Clark, makers and creators of fine falconry furniture. Use the code SportingChance10 for 10% off your order. Now let's get into the show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by Zach Bohn. Welcome, Zach.
I got to set up the fur thing like Casey has behind him. That's pretty awesome.
I know, man. He's got a cool background, but super lazy. It's just a couple of hooks and some furs.
Some hooks and some furs, but Zach, I have only you to thank for those furs.
I know, man. So those look great. They came out great, and
dude, look at the look at the Fisher. The Fisher is the size of the fox.
I know. They're
so big. Dude, this thing is huge. It's literally, I have a red fox hanging directly next to it. They're exactly the same size.
Well, so for the listeners, Casey has got, he hopped on Amazon.com and bought a little like coat rack, and he hung some furs off of it and a Hoyt bow. And is there a bear skull? I can't see the bear skull in there.
Yes, there's a bear skull.
There is a bear skull.
Yeah. I harvested that bear in upstate New York.
Harvested.
I harvested it.
He harvested it.
And harvested is a good word because that was literally like the most delicious meat I've ever eaten in my life. It was like 150-pound bear.
We killed him, some bitches.
I think Ginger like weighs more than the bear did. But it was eaten on berries only. And the meat, like legitimately the meat was sweet. It was so good. It was insanely good. So
have you ever heard sweet like bear meat?
I've never heard that.
Honestly, one of the best bears I've ever had was at Seth's house, and he had one of those like PA corn-fed farm like bears, and it was the front shoulder was some of the best bear meat I ever had, and it was like I think he did like 8 hours in the oven, just like was ready to fall off the front shoulder.
That's the way to do it. That's the only way I eat the bear. Really, is I do crock pot and set it in the morning, and then come back 12 hours later or 8 hours later or whatever. And that thing is just like falling off the bone. And when you eat it, even my wife ate it. She's like, this is so freaking good. She couldn't tell the difference of what it was.
I know. They really are some of the most underrated game meat out there, you know, and I tell this with everyone when they're, I had venison before it was horrible, or I had bear before it was horrible. I said, it's all on how you cook it, you know? Yeah. It takes kind of a little bit of extra care because it's such a unique meat. You got your Zen there?
Yeah. Zinned up.
Yeah. 6s and 3s.
6s and 3s only.
They need to sponsor the show.
Dude, imagine. Keeps me going.
Yeah. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, because Zach, you've been a falconer for how long now?
11 years. So it's crazy how when I first got into it, till now, it has just, the time has flown by.
Literally.
I know.
It slipped by.
Boy.
It's stooped by.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Yeah. Dude,
so who was your sponsor, Zach?
I had Joe Kozakowski as a sponsor, and we went to 2 NAFA meets together. He was a great sponsor.
He was the Northeast director for a while, right?
Yeah. And I think he ran the NJ Club for a while too. So he's a good sponsor. And one of the things he did was introduce me to a lot of other falconers. And so I kind of got a lot of other perspectives as an apprentice. So it wasn't just him. He was like, I went out with Phil hawking. I went out with Pack hawking, got out with Teddy and, everyone else. So it just kept, well, here's how somebody does it. Doesn't mean it's, good or bad. It's here's how another person does it. So
that's a good way to be brought up in the sport, in my opinion, because I mean, we see it. I saw it today on Facebook. People are fighting and arguing over stuff that's really just based off of opinion and the way that they feel personally it should be done. And there's so many ways to train a bird. I mean, you can trap a red tail, throw it in a chamber, and throw food to it for a month to the point when it's looking forward to you coming in, and then just start getting it to jump to the glove. And people do it that way. It works. And then they're killing game. There's people that strap it to their glove and wander around their park, and just basically essentially wake the bird. Then there's people that take it into a room. Like there's literally a million ways to skin a cat in this sport. And people really get like bogged down by their own personal way of doing things. And that is cool that Joe did that, because a lot of sponsors will kind of like, they want to insert their personal, maybe he did. I mean, most sponsors do a little bit, but it sounds like he kind of gave you a little bit of different perspectives as you were coming up, which is good.
Yeah. And it was cool to kind of, see everybody's perspective and then see, how, what worked for me and what didn't work for me. And, just to kind of, play with that and work with that and kind of see what kind of falconry I wanted to do. And, because everybody hunts different types of areas. So what may work for one person might not work for me, because I tend to hunt more larger spots. And I do have some smaller spots, but, mostly it's larger spots, or, it's working around deer hunters or stuff, or it's, so, but yeah, so I was able to kind of figure out how to work in between those spots and, get the best falconry for me.
Yeah.
What kind of birds have you flown over the past 11 years?
So I had 4 red tails, and, that was a lot of fun. And then I ended up switching to goshawks. I think Casey and I got we got our first goshawks together.
Yeah. Yeah. I flew Phil's North American for like half a season. And then after that, I was like a crackhead. Like, he just got his first hit. I was like, and then after that, I was like, oh, I'm getting go. And then, yeah, me and Zach, we got it from the same breeder, Aaron Jones. He makes good birds out in California. Jason Norman, who was a previous guest on the show, his bird came from Aaron. And yeah, so we split the shipping, right, Zach? I remember.
Yeah, I remember you picked it up, and then I drove to Phil's house, and we ended up getting it from Phil's house, and we were comparing them at Phil's house. So
yeah, you got. It was a pure tiercel fin I got, and you got it was a North American something. It was a cross, I think, right?
Yeah, 3/4 North American and 1/4 Siberian.
Yeah,
and that was one of the best birds I ever had, because I was living at home at the time, and I was able to tell my parents, I said, you got to raise the thing for the first 2 years in the house. Otherwise, it's going to turn out to be a horrible bird. And they believed me. So throughout the whole screaming, I raised this thing up from probably, I got it in, when did we get it?
I could look back at my camera because it shows the date. I think it was like March of like, what, 18?
Yeah.
2018?
And then I ended up keeping it in the house until like Christmas time. And then for the Christmas holiday, they ended up snapping and I had to remove it. But that bird made no noise, and it wouldn't scream at all. So and it would scream inside the house, but because that's where it was used to. But when I took it out of there, it wouldn't make any noise at all. It didn't scream in the mew. It would only scream in the kitchen. So
was that a female?
Yeah, female.
Yeah, we hunted a couple times with that bird. That was a good bird. And you raised that bird. With imprints, man, it's like the sky's the limit. How much effort you want to put into it, and you put a lot of effort in that bird. Because I remember you would wake up at like 4 a.m. when it was pitch black, and you would like go in there in the dark and like feel your way around and like slide the food in or something, right? You were telling me, and like it wouldn't get light for like 2 hours, and then the bird would just the sun would come up, and then it would see the food like 2 hours later or something like that, right?
Yeah, so I would I would leave for work pretty early at like 5. And so I would go in there, like leave for work with no lights on whatsoever. So I would have like maybe my like phone flashlight, and even then like, I would try not to breathe, have this much like no, because I'm like it's gonna recognize my breathing.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I would go in there, slide the squirrel carcass. I usually pack it full of like tidbits, and so it would start eating on its own. And then I would just like back up without even trying to have my feet hit the ground, and then like go out a different door. And then my mom would be like waking up at like 7 to like make coffee, and then the bird would just be eating, staring at her. And but
Perfect.
yeah, so we were able to raise it in the kitchen, and I think that like I think raising a bird in the house is probably like a very beneficial thing to the bird, because it's like some of the best birds I've seen have been raised in the house for a decent amount of time.
Yes, but you don't have to raise it. So I will just say that for
Yeah.
all the people listening that say I can't get a goshawk because I have to raise it in the house. I've seen phenomenal birds that are raised just in a freaking mew in a nest bowl, and it's just super low effort, and they do kind of turn out similar. Well, it depends how much effort you're either putting in the work early or you're putting in the work later, but you're putting work in. And Tyler Sladen says it best. It's a direct. And I noticed it, and then he said it, and I'm like, that's exactly spot on. With an imprint and a good imprint that turns out well, it's a direct correlation to how many hours and minutes you put into them.
Exactly. Because
wow, how groundbreaking.
Dude, it's like phenomenal. It's like
it's
philosophy.
pretty much either way you put it, it's hard work. It's
yeah. Oh yeah. It's hard. Like it's hard work, but like if you like it and you think it's fun, I don't really find it to be that much work. I mean, like today I put the bird out at 7 a.m. for hack, and then I went to church with the family, came home, ate lunch, took a nap, and then went to go get the bird. And then, she was just right kind of where I left her in the woods. And then I just put a rabbit carcass in the bushes, ran a string out. She flew over by me, yelling and screaming. And then I just yelled ho 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 and pulled the carcass out, and she flew down and chased it and grabbed it, and then I let her pluck on it and then traded her off to the lure. I mean, it's like it's not like that hard, but it does require effort. And if it's like if you view falconry as like work or like something that's like you have to do, then obviously it's gonna work. But if it's fun for you, it's not work, it's just fun. It's just messing with birds. It's fun.
I'm a believer that raising birds inside is, you get a much more tame bird that way. That's what I'm doing with my chamber raised bird, any chamber raised bird. But it all started with a friend of mine. Her red tail was inside, and red tails are pretty easy to deal with, period. But she had the most chilled out, docile red tail to handle ever. Like, unbelievable.
Yeah.
It was just a phenomenal bird. And after seeing that, compared to my birds that I would just free loft, there was just such a huge difference between the two. So I don't think I wouldn't do it with an imprint myself. That sounds like hell.
What, in the house?
Yeah.
Well, Zach, tell us about the imprint. What was it called? What did you guys call it? Miguel, you borrowed it from Miguel, and Miguel, he kind of like came up with it. I'm sure somebody's already come up with it.
So it was like kind of like a 5x5 plexiglass container, and it was see-through, so the bird could see everything, but it would keep the slices in and all the fluff in. And I ended up keeping that bird in there for like, when it was hard pen, I had it on a pole perch in there, but still keep in there. But so it was nice to you kind of see everybody has their own different little imprint pen, whether it's like a stroller or like just something like a baby carriage or just something like different. But it's I definitely would agree with Aaron how it brings a different level of socialization when you're the bird's normally in the mew, but now it's inside your kitchen at night and it's still seeing you. And I think they definitely do make for calmer birds, but not saying that it's definitely the right way to do it. But I know with that bird, I kept it. What I ended up doing was no baggies, and I kept it fat all the way. We got it in March. I kept it fat all the way until August, and then once it was all the way hard penned, that's when I started working with it. And I think because that bird was so quiet, I think that really helped that out a lot. Not saying that was the whole reason for that bird not screaming, but I think I certainly raised it in the house and letting it develop and then keeping it fat and then finally starting to work it down and not cutting its weight too fast. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes people make with goshawks, I would say.
I agree 100%. Yeah, and I think Nicole Peretta kind of coined that whole idea because you did it kind of in a passive way without realizing. Maybe you did, but there's a whole, like we said, about 100 ways to skin a cat. There's a whole philosophy with raising imprints where you don't really do any weight management or control like the whole first season, and that basically the philosophy. Same thing like then there's the hand feeding method, right? And there's like hand feeding, and then but this method, and I think Nicole, if I'm not mistaken, the audience can correct us, but I think Nicole Peretta came up with it. It's basically you don't really do any weight adjustment the first season, maybe slightly the first season, and your goal is just to create a very well-mannered, no screaming, calm bird. And then the second season, when you start bringing the weight down, the thought process behind it, I believe, is that the bird doesn't think of screaming as getting a reward for food, and they just don't scream.
Yeah,
and I've seen birds like a buddy out west, Vinny. He has a bird. I mean, it's like the thing. He's like going to the field to go hawking, and it's like on the front seat, like nibbling on his hair and jumping on the dashboard, like in like December. You know what I mean? And like most people's goshawks, like the average, you wouldn't really be able to do that with a bird at that time of the year when you raise, you know what I mean? Like they're like ready to go. They want to kill. They're like all amped up. And it seems like it's an interesting philosophy. And like, so basically you kind of did that to a degree, right? I guess it sounds like you didn't really. Yeah.
I mean, I was in, I kind of kept its weight up until the very last minute where it was at the point where it started taking me way too long of time to get it back down. And then I started like very low weight management to where it was just like 5 grams off a day. And it took a lot longer time, but when we did get going and killing, it was like such a nicer, more well-mannered bird to where there was a lot less aggression.
Yeah.
And it ended up being like virtually no screaming in the field at all. So that was cool. I think, I probably, didn't really know what I was doing. It was my first goshawk, but I would, say that's how it worked out.
How long did you have that bird?
I had it for probably the first season, and then something ended up happening where it got injured out hunting, and then the next day it just ended up not making it, and I found it dead in the mew. So
that's goshawks for you. That's goshawks for you.
Yeah,
I don't care what anybody says, man. They will find a way somehow to kill themselves.
I want to know how much per year is spent on goshawks.
Oh, like the stock market index, like how much money goes into goshawks every
year? The goshawk economy.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's got to be.
In America, just like there's so many people buy a new bird every year because they have to.
Well, you see all over Facebook and Instagram now, everybody's got their new imprint or new parent reared, and it's kind of like for next year. Now I want one, Now I see like all these people having the experience, and like I feel like I'm missing out, and now I'm like want another one. Like what's going on here?
You got a good bird right now, but it's like
it's a little slow right now. So I'm like I want another one raising it in.
I could do it right now. Yeah, I got time.
Yeah, let's do it.
That's literally how.
I got it. I can do it.
Yeah, scratching like Chappelle, like Dave Chappelle.
He's like, got any more of those goshawks, Joe Rogan?
Y'all got any more of them goshawks?
Yeah. That was
Another
good, Aaron.
imprint show?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Zach, you've done parent reared as well, correct?
Yeah, and I had good parent rear, and I had parent reared birds that were kind of a little bit more difficult. But I would say that if you could compare to the best imprint versus the best parent reared, I'd say I like parent reared more because of like they're just more pleasant on a kill, more pleasant hawking, and I'm talking about the end of the line product. I feel like with imprints, there are things you kind of have to worry about, and like if they're going to go off and like bind to your neighbor's dog, or just do something like, especially in the beginning, like you kind of like always like are a little bit on edge about that. Versus like I had parent reared, and they'll like I feel like they have more of that sense of self preservation when it comes to stuff like that, where they're just like.
I remember. Sorry to cut you off. I flew an imprint goshawk, and I took a couple years away from that, and I got my parent reared, and I was flying it in a industrial area where people walk still. There's like a lot of walkers out there. And I think it was the first free flight I ever had her on. She flew up into a tree, and there was this old dude walking underneath the tree wearing a red hat. And I'm just standing there with my stomach, my heart in my stomach, just thinking to myself, please, dear God, do not fly down and smash that guy in the head. Do not do it. Do not. And so I'm sitting there watching her. The guy has no idea she's in this tree, and he is just strolling by so slow, and he's like swinging his arms back and forth as he's walking. And I'm like, he couldn't look less interesting. He might as well have like been swinging lures around while he was walking. And she's just sitting there, and she's cocking her head to the side, looking at him, and I'm just like praying. I'm on my knees praying to God that she doesn't hit him. And no, she did not. But that's because I was so conditioned to imprints, and imprints, if you do it right, they're fine. That shouldn't happen. Right. But have all of us having flown imprints before, we know that's always on the table.
Especially early on. Yeah, man.
First free flight. This was the very first free flight.
It's like, oh, look, a giant piece of meat attached to some person's head. This must be a new exercise.
Yeah.
That same spot, I had an apprentice once. He didn't make the cut. I probably don't even need to include that part. I just feel like sharing it. He didn't make the cut, but he was an apprentice for a brief while.
Pack your bags and get the fuck out of here.
We'll have to talk about that at some point. So, his bird that he trapped ended up in the hands of a rehabber. On Facebook, on Facebook, a bird with anklets on, and the people claim that it was like that it had killed their dog in their backyard. I don't believe that. That's a long story, but anyway, back to what I'm saying. So anyway, I was out working with that imprint, and this guy, he had like a little ponytail.
He's asking for it.
Something about that ponytail got my bird beat up, and it was a he actually. He started like flying towards him, and the dumbass like takes off running from the bird, which is like the last thing you do when everybody knows that a predator's chasing you. You don't fucking run from it.
Yeah.
No, he's running, so his little ponytail's flying in there.
Was it like a man bun or like a legit ponytail?
No, it was a little ponytail. It was like 4 or 5 inches long.
Your bird's like, this is not natural. This looks like it should be removed from the ecosystem.
I need to kill this.
Even the bird knew that needed to disappear.
He's running from my bird, and I'm like, I'm yelling at him. I'm like, dude, stop running. You can't outrun a hawk.
That's so
And of
funny.
course, yeah, the bird binds to the back of his head, and he's like,
Jittering.
he's doubled over in pain. And I run up and I grab the bird and I go, "Are you okay, man? You okay?" And he goes, "No, I'm not okay."
You just dispatch him and then go back to the truck.
And I should have dispatched that guy right then and there.
Yeah, I think every falconer who's done imprint goshawks, or and it doesn't even have to be like where it went after another person, but where they end up like
Doing something
on a chicken in somebody's backyard in a neighborhood, or just some story like that. I feel like that's just part of imprint goshawks, where they just
or just messing. They're just curious and they want to mess with. You raise them around the dogs, and then they get like all interested. Like you had a situation where your bird, like you were entering it and it flew over and was like, "This is actually great. This is actually a great story." And it flew over and it was like you don't really know what happened, right? Because by the time you got there, the guy was trying to rip the bird's head off, right? Talk us through that. But essentially, the bird flew is a great story. The bird flew. Go ahead. You go ahead. You tell it.
So I had permission. I just got a job somewhere new, so I was trying to like figure out new spots to go, and I just gotten permission on a farm nearby a park. And so we're flying. The bird was heavy, of course. We always start with that. And I was flying this farm, and I noticed her kind of go off into the distance. And I watched her. She was kind of just milling around in these woods over there. And so I start making my way over, and it was probably a couple hundred yards over there. So, and she's a white bird, a white Russian goshawk. And so I see her over there just, and she goes on this long flight through the woods after something, and then she's landing on the ground. And so I start walking over there and I go on a ledge, and I'm like, oh shit, she's on the ground, And so then I hear this guy start screaming because I lost sight of the bird, and I just hear this guy start screaming, ah! Ah! And I'm like, oh. I knew I put together in my head what had happened. So I run over there, and this guy, he's getting footed on his arm. He's got his hand choking the bird, and he's getting footed so bad. And so the guy's like, "You're not getting this bird back. It's going to the Raptor Trust. There's no way you're getting this bird back." So I got the bird back. I kind of had to restrain.
You said I'm going to set it up. I'm going to tee it up. So you got there. He said it was messing with his dog or tried to say something like that. And then you said, "Let the bird go. You're hurting it." And then he said, "I'm not letting this bird go," and proceeded to try to essentially rip the bird's freaking head off right in front of you.
He said that, so I think the bird landed on the ground after it was chasing something. And he had a German short hair that was off leash. And I think the German short hair naturally just ran up to the bird to try and sniff it. The bird footed the German short hair, and then the guy came over, and instead of like taking his dog away from the bird, he tried to pick the bird up, and then it footed him, and he grabbed it around the neck. And so I got there, and he's pretty much choking the bird to death. And then he refused to give the bird back, and he said he would kill it if I tried to get the bird back. So I was just like, what are you doing? Like, if you're really that scared about the bird and you don't think I should have it, wouldn't you just let it go?
Yeah.
So, but then I ended up getting the bird back, and I still remember this. Like, the guy kept telling me, he's like, "You're lucky, you're lucky." He kept saying, "You're lucky." But this guy was also probably like 45 years old, wearing skinny jeans.
Oh yeah, that tells you all you need to know.
Yeah. So tell the viewers. But yeah, so I ended up getting the bird back, and then the police came, and police were, they were actually pretty cool. They just said, like, we can't just take people's property, and so then they just said, let us know if the bird has any long-lasting injuries from this, and so they filed a police report, and that was the end of it.
Yeah, they were pretty much on your side, because at first he was trying to claim like he had the right to kill the bird because it was like by him or near him. And then when you explained that it's a federally protected bird and he had no right to reach out and try to grab it or kill it, then like his whole tune changed, and he didn't want to, and then the cops like, you want to press charges? He's like, forget it then, because he thought he had the right to just rip the head off of a bird of prey. And that's, and people have opinions on that. And at the end of the day, I have chickens, if you have chickens out free ranging and a red-tailed hawk comes down and grabs one, you can't just walk up to it and smash it over the head with a shovel. Like, that's illegal. If you wanted to do that, or you had a serious problem with that, you would have to get a depredation permit to remove them, which you can do. And it's possible. And that's the main reason why we get golden eagle take in this country, is because they impact, lambs out west and stuff like that. And you can get a permit to trap those problem birds and remove them. That's like pretty much how most falconers get them, if I'm not mistaken.
And that's correct.
Yeah, he thought he could just rip the head off your bird and you were just going to stand there and watch it. You went easy. I heard the whole story in detail, and in my opinion, you went pretty.
Yeah, people are, the first rule of law, people are crazy kind of everywhere you go. And, and so that was a pretty unlogical situation. And it was, the guy had mentioned, where you can do it with coyotes, but you can't do it with, birds of prey. And like, it's totally a different situation, because you have birds of prey, which are, federally protected birds, versus coyotes, which are more in the state's hands. And a lot of people in the public don't understand that not all wildlife are under the same laws.
Yeah. And while we're telling stories about birds attacking people, I will just tell a personal story of mine, just so that we're all, Aaron told one, Zach told one, so I got to tell. And this actually happened last year. And listen, it was kind of, I would say it was my fault, but like, it kind of wasn't my fault. Like,
oh, there we go.
No
accountability.
Why is somebody, I saw a squirrel in my front yard, of course. I'm in a rush as usual. So I'm like, instead of going hawking, I'll just catch the squirrel and my bird will be happy. And I have property. It'll be fine. Of course, the squirrel goes directly into a hole, and then the bird's up in the tree, and she won't come down because she's looking for the bird. And I fly my birds heavy earlier in the season. But of course, as we know as falconers, the second your bird leaves the glove or you're in the middle of something, another random person will always appear. Like, you could literally bet money on it. You could throw $1,000 down on the ground and bet whoever's around you that someone's going to appear right now, and somebody will appear. So my lovely neighbor was out for a stroll wearing a North Face with a fur-lined hood. So my bird just missed that squirrel. She's amped. She's screaming at this lady. Number one, this bird was raised on the property, so this is like her territory, number one. Number two, she has a fur-lined jacket, and she walks underneath, and she's looking up at the bird, and the bird's looking at her, and I'm freaking throwing everything. I'm throwing everything that's in my bag out on the ground. I'm launching carcasses in the air. She's looking at me, looking at the bird. Bird comes down and freaking whacks her in the back and tries to grab the jacket. And then she freaks out and runs. And then the bird starts chasing her. And then she's like trying to juke the bird. I'm running to try to get over there to help. And then the lady, and I'm yelling, I'm like, it's your jacket. I'm so sorry, it's your jacket. And then it was like a cheap North Face. So she just it was like Velcroed on or clipped on. And she just rips the fur off of the jacket and just throws it as she's running down the street. And the bird just flies down and just casually lands on it and starts mantling on top of the fur in the street. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. And she's just like running for the hills, dude. And my mom, of course, which is, she's been a huge part of my falconry since I was a kid. And my wife was at work and my mom was watching my son. And she comes on the porch because she heard all the commotion. And my mom is worse than me. So she starts dying laughing. She literally, and I'm like, I'm going to get sued. The bird hit her, I wonder if something happened, and nothing came of it. And she didn't walk past my house for probably the whole year. And then I saw her and her husband walk past my house in the springtime. And they were on the other side of the street. And they were
looking over their shoulder.
And the husband was in between her and my house,
He's got a lacrosse stick.
Yeah, he's got a freaking Uzi with him, and I waved and they waved back, and I tried to find out where they lived. I was gonna like send them a bottle of wine or say I'm sorry or whatever. And I told her, I'm like, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And she just kept running, and yeah, we never addressed it. It was just one of those things that never happened. But yeah, like stuff can happen. I mean, I've heard stories like that happening with like red tails, like passage red tails, like somebody wearing like a hoodie that's got fur on it or something. Like, I mean, there's a million stories, I'm sure. So
Harris Hawks too. I heard a bunch of those stories with them too, where they see like a smaller dog or something, or
yeah, I've heard those
I had a
stories.
Harris Hawk attack someone else's dog.
Yeah. A bunch of terrible falconers in this podcast today, I guess.
Well, you know what? That's what happens when you're forced to hawk,
Yeah, when
urban,
you fly.
suburban, and urban places. Yeah, and you hunt. It's easy to not have accidents when you never fly your bird.
Or you're flying in the middle of nowhere where there's zero interactions with humans or anything, like that. Of course, you can have a bird for 20 years, 15 years catching jacks in the middle of nowhere. I mean, come on. Not saying that we shouldn't mitigate it, and I do mitigate it now. I kind of try to take a little look around. I used to be just like I just a little bit out of control, like an addict, I gotta go. But now I kind of I'm like, all right, power line there. Okay, there's a fence over there. Cover in front of the fence looks good. That could be a potential hazard. I've kind of matured over the years and kind of curtailed my hunting to try to prolong, try to mitigate any situations. But really, there's nothing there's always something that could happen no matter where you go. As soon as that bird leaves your glove, something could happen.
I mean, I took you to the once. So this past year, I lost a dog, and it was a pretty tough experience. But Casey, I took you to that spot where I lost. I had the last hunt with that dog, and it never came back. And it was a pretty safe spot. There was very few power lines. There was nothing, roads or anything. And the dog we had a malfunction on the collar to where the collar, didn't end up working. And that was it. The dog just wandered off, and I couldn't, vibrate it back, or, and the collar ended up falling off. I found it, but it was like you guys say, it's like whenever you let go of that dog or bird, and it certainly doesn't take much. And I definitely think compared to other types of hunting, falconers kind of experience a lot more loss, because I know guys who will take their bird dogs and they'll do stock pheasant hunts, and they'll never lose a dog versus, I think us falconers were using smaller dogs, or, we're doing things with hawks that are, in tighter places because there's more game there. And I think we certainly have, a much more up close relationship with nature, because most falconers, seen their birds die, or, so I think it kind of gives us more perspective on, how things are really out there.
Well said, Zach. Also the fact that we take part in the prey being killed, we're not removed from it. We're up close as it's dying.
Yeah. Like you shoot a deer and it runs off and it kind of dies alone, and then you track up to it when it's already dead. But, or you shoot a bird, and most times the bird's dead when you get there. But unlike this is when you get up to the bird and your bird's, on a rabbit or a squirrel, and, they're still fighting for control at that point most of the time. So it gives you a much more personal perspective on how nature works and how fragile everything is. So
yeah, very well said. And that's another point, and I'll hit it from a different angle. Is we can't spout off to the general public that we trap birds of prey from the wild, because 70 to 80% of them die, sometimes 90%, depending on the species of bird, and they die from all these different ways, and all these things can happen when they're out there. So we get an opportunity to work with one and possibly give it a better future and release it back one day. You can't spout those statistics off to the general public, and then when something happens to your bird, act like, how did that happen? Like if you're removing a bird from the wild and you're then putting it back in the wild to use it as a hunting bird, I personally feel like that 80%, that 70%, it's still there. Like you're still adding the risk, the potential danger and ways that a bird can die is still hovering over that bird's life because it's still a factor in that bird's life. If you put it in a chamber, just fed it, then yeah, you remove all risk other than sickness or whatever the case may be. But if you're putting it back in the landscape and you're using it for hunting and we're partaking in this interesting, beautiful sport of falconry, there has to be some loss. If there wasn't any loss, then it wouldn't make sense because there's definitely going to be loss. So that's kind of my perspective, is that birds will die in many different ways. And I just switched hacking locations because my bird has an obsession with flying 400 yards all the way to this road and sitting over the road for some unknown reason. So yeah. And I went to pick her up from hack and she's like flying down casually over the road, coming down, looking for me. And I'm like, she's just going to get creamed by a car in 2 seconds. So she was there for about 3 days. And now I switched to a new spot with zero cars, zero anything. I mean, there's a walking trail. And of course, I go there tonight to pick her up and I pull into the parking lot of this, it's a walking trail, but then there's like probably 2,000 acres of state property, just all wooded and marshes and mountains and whatever. And I pull in the parking lot and there's a car in the parking lot and there's one trail and I go. So I'm like, here we go. So I walk down, GPS connects at the parking lot. She didn't go very far from where I dropped her. And then I see the GPS pinging right over the trail. And I go, oh, great. She's probably stomped to death on the side. But I go over there and then, no, she was like, 60, 50 feet up high in the top of a tree, over the trail, just hanging out in the sun. And as soon as she saw me, she got all amped up and started flying around and kind of like checking me out. So I threw a carcass in the bushes and then did a carcass drag for her and yelled and simulated a hunt and all that. And then when she's on it, this couple walked by and they came on their way back to their car. And I asked them, I said, did you notice this bird, when you came? And she goes, oh yeah, we saw it. It was kind of peeping at us and making noise and looking at us, but it didn't come down or anything like that. We just noticed it. We heard the bells and, it was very cool. That's amazing that that's your bird. And I was able to give them like a little falconry talk, for lack of a better word. And it was a really pleasant experience. They'll probably call the cops anyway. Back to the car. but it was a really pleasant experience. But even in the middle of nowhere in a remote trail, obscure trail that like doesn't even have a trailhead, it's just like an old road that goes from one end to the other that's a couple miles long and you can't drive on it. It's now just a walking path. There's still obstacles. Like if the bird came down and landed on the ground and the husband thought that the bird was a threat or was just some crazy asshole and decided to punt it across the trail and kill it, like that literally could have happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like anything can happen. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
You got fisher and bobcat and coyote in your area, and you tend to have, because you're more north than me, you tend to have more bobcat and fisher in your area. And even like I've known imprints on the younger side tend to land on the ground more. And, just suppose your bird finds a puddle and it goes land on the ground to bathe in. It doesn't take much, Dude,
it's so funny that you said that because I'm walking down this trail and I have her on the glove and I'm kind of just walking casually down the trail waiting for her to choose when she wants to leave the glove to go up, to just cut her loose. And what does she do? She flies all the way down the trail into a puddle. And then and then I'm like, do I leave or do I not leave? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what the correct answer would be. So I decided to stay and I basically had to watch her play with sticks and bathe in the puddle in the trail for about 35, 40 minutes before she decided to step back up to the glove and then go land on a perch that was safe. You know what I mean? It's like, what do I just leave? She's probably going to go to the puddle anyway. Like, would she have gone to the puddle if I wasn't there? Is she going into creeks and puddles when I'm not there on the ground exposed? Like anything can happen.
Yeah. And so let's say this. So from the moment you left, the moment you went to get her, how long was that?
Roughly like 11 hours, something like that.
And
10 hours.
what's the longest hack you've ever done? Like for like one day, like the longest that any of your birds have ever been like out in the wild without you?
He's done 36 hours.
Yeah, I've done like 40. I mean, there's a hack still going on right now with the peregrine. Probably it's been to Peru and then back up to the tundra and then back to Peru. I mean, I don't know where she is. She's still out there. It's still going on. I'll let you know how it goes when I find it. No, yeah. I put birds out, like 6 a.m. and gone to work or gone to the gym or whatever, and then they've been out until 8 o'clock at night, 7:30 when I pull them down. So they've been out for as long as they could be out. I like to give myself personally, for the listeners, hacking is, I think it's worth the risk. People that are listening and saying, well, hacking, why even bother? There's so many benefits to hacking. There's so much muscle growth, body control, flight style, landing ability. All that stuff is going to have to be learned by the bird, whether it's in the field off your glove. And if I'm going to be beating brush for rabbits, I would rather my bird already kind of know how to fly and have some muscle base to work off of before I start putting slips in front of it and wasting my time, sweating my ass off, trying to put slips in front of my bird. So I am a huge proponent of the hack. So I've had them out before, but I like to give myself at least an hour and a half, 2 hours to reclaim my bird. God forbid.
And that was
you're saying you get there a couple hours before dark. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, if it gets dark at 8:30, the sun goes down at 8:30. I like to get there at like 6:30 max to be able to. Some people probably do it depending on where you are, like out west where it's more open and stuff. You could probably get away with like an hour, half an hour. But I don't want to be in the situation where I get back to the hack location, realize that my bird has now started to wander. It's a half a mile or a mile away through the mountain, exploring, quote unquote dispersal, and now I got to hike in and try to find it, and it's getting dark, and then I can't find it, and then now something like that. So I like to give myself a little time. She didn't go. She was like literally probably 100 yards. When I went after the gym this morning to check on her, I didn't go in. I just pulled into the lot and let the GPS reconnect. And she was like essentially in the same exact tree that I left her like 2 hours before. And when I went back tonight, she was probably 100 yards from where I left her. So she's still like in baby mode, just kind of hanging out where I left her. She's not really going anywhere right now, but there will be a point where I'll go back and she'll be a mile away. And that's kind of when the hack is coming to an end. She's starting to disperse. She's starting to chase things. And then that's what I'll start trying to get her into the hunting mode. And it's like a lot of guys like to keep track of the numbers and, 24-day hack. Like it's just about the bird, man. It's about the bird. When the bird starts dispersing, like I knew my hack needed to end with my tiercel 3 years ago when I watched him snatch a sparrow right out of the air in flight, right in front of me, and then fly up to a tree, pluck it, drop it on purpose, chase it to the ground, catch it again, land in another tree, pluck it a little bit, and then just casually drop it, watch it fall to the floor, and then fly away. And I'm like, all right, this bird is like fully capable of catching whatever it wants, whenever it wants. So let's start putting slips in front of it. And then that's when I ended the hack. And that was probably about 18 days, 20 days or so. I was like, I'm done. You know what I mean?
Zach, I got a question for you.
Yep.
What was your process for your parent reared birds?
Great question.
I would actually hack them too. So I would get them home, and the first day or two we would work on, doing a little hood training, I get them to eat through the hood, and then I take the hood off and get them eating from the glove, and then I would have pretty much, a rabbit carcass in my hand, get them to eat from that, and then I would, drop the rabbit carcass, and then the bird would jump down to the ground, and then I would just extend that distance, and once I was pretty confident I could get the bird back, I would throw it out for hack. And I live kind of in a more less developed area of New Jersey, so then I would just let the bird go. And the cool thing about the parent reared versus imprints, in my experience, is, on the East Coast, we have a lot more trees, so we tend to let our goshawks follow more than hunting purely from the fist. And I found that the parent reared are way more likely to follow you than an imprint will probably just sit up in a tree unless, you really encourage the following. But I found like the parent reared naturally take on to the following. So when I was hacking my bird, you would see it chasing a tree and whatnot, and then it would kind of, I had my parents' 65-acre farm, and I would walk around, but that would keep up with me, at 65, 70 days old, it would just follow me around my parents' farm.
So how
And
many days inside the house were you feeding it?
probably, all the way up to, so I would get that bird, and I forget when I got it, but I knew it spent 3, 4 months in the house, even till after it was hard penned. I had a pole perch in the kitchen, and I would just post it up in there and have like a 10 or 12 by 12 tarp underneath it, and it would just kind of sit there and spray it down, and with water, and then it would kind of just watch everything that went on, and it was a very calm bird.
So for 3 or 4 months before you let it out, is that what you're saying?
No, after the hack into hunting
Okay.
season.
So how many days were you manning the bird before you let it out to hack?
I would say probably not that much. So probably, once I got it home, I think you get them home from Seth at what, 55 days old, around there. I think,
something like that, like just before hard penning. Yeah, something like that.
and so I was trying to get it ready for a hack as quick as I could. So I spent a lot of time with that bird. Just I would have it posted up on a pole perch and just move the pole perch to wherever I was. So if I was outside, chilling or doing something like that, I would have it posted up there. Or if I was in for the night, I would put it in my kitchen, and I would just try and, like, every day move a little bit closer and expose it to new things, but always have it exposed to something. And then as soon as I was able to get the bird back with any sort of food or something like that, I let it go for hacking. But then the
Did you
socialize,
cut the weight at all?
uh, not really. No, I tried not to. I so, and if I did, it was more of, I extended the feeding times.
Pro tip.
Yeah. So, but I really tried not to cut the weight as much. So
I found my bird, my female, naturally cut her own weight. Kind of weird.
yeah,
I would feed her I'd give her whole quail a day. And then whatever she didn't eat when I had the opportunity to get it away from her, when she was done with it and it was just laying there, I would get that away from her. And it's like she ate less and less for a while until it got to a point to where it's like every day she would eat, half of it. And she was losing weight. And then when we got to the point where she was eating half of it, that's when that was kind of her weight,
yeah.
And
So
then I fine tuned it later as we started hunting. And I found early, it's funny, and I don't know why. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think. Early on, I was able to fly her a lot heavier than what I could fly her later in the year.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, what do you guys think?
I would agree with that, because I had that happen a lot where
It's like as she built up confidence, she felt like she needed me less.
Yeah, it's hard to put your finger on exactly what it is that goes on, but that's common with goshawks, also imprints as well. I personally noticed that. I mean, I had that Karen bird, man. I got videos of that bird chasing squirrels around trees at 1,475 grams, which is just obese, huge. But then after a point, it's like they get used to the weight, and then you kind of have to keep creeping it down. It's a constant fluctuation. It's not like my bird flies at this weight and that's it. It's not a robot. So it's like, if it's, she would chase stuff and do all that, but then it got to a point where she just didn't care to chase anything or had no interest in anything, even food. And then it was kind of like like the bird was telling you when you had to adjust the weight, kind of. Whereas go ahead.
Yeah, I think with every goshawk it's been like that, to a certain, where I would start the hack at a, maybe not a much higher weight, but where at a certain point in that hack it would be the same weight, and for some whatever reason that bird would refuse to come down to that weight, and then I would have to, like you said, it would tell you when you needed to drop that weight, and so actually with my Russian bird I have now, I tried for a week straight. I didn't bring the bird home.
Let me stop you there for a second. You have a albidus, and is this a parent reared albidus?
It's an imprint from Moglich.
Oh, okay.
So with this bird, I tried something new to where I kind of had a week where I wasn't working as much, so I let it go, and I would feed it on a lure in the morning, and then I would just basically let it go back in the tree and leave again. And I just let it be. Didn't bring it home with me for a week, and then after that,
you would sleep outside.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So
it's interesting. I don't know if I would do that, but I mean that's a big that's a big bird, man. I mean there's not much that wants to mess with that.
Chance. It still doesn't have a chance if a great horned owl gets a hold of it.
But do you think a great horned owl? Like I was thinking about this today. I think about it all the time. Every time I go to get my bird from Hack, actually. If it gets stuck out and won't come down, or I can't find it and it gets dark, like, is a great horned owl really going to go out of its way to kill, a 1,300 gram white goshawk?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm convincing myself in like this scenario in my mind, like, oh,
I know
no one's going to mess with her.
I know these are not predators, but a friend of mine, he ran a nature center, and they had a barnyard where they had poultry and stuff like that. And they had peacocks, and the peacocks kept disappearing. Big ass peacocks, right? And, we all know exactly based on what we're talking about, what it was that was taking the peacocks.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And if they would grab a peacock and kill a peacock, they would absolutely grab a bird, a 1,400 gram goshawk sitting in a tree.
Well, everyone sees those viral videos of when they have Nest cameras, and the owl just comes out of nowhere and just in the middle of the night.
Yeah, that video is epic. The one with the European eagle owl coming up and snatching those like buzzards.
It's spooky.
Oh yeah, you just see the eyes glowing. And then it doesn't even stop moving. It just throws its legs out, rips an eyas out of the nest.
And the bird that's still there is like looking around like, what?
Like, more food for me.
It's just like, imagine that, and you're just like, what just happened to my brother?
I got that's the only thing for great horned owls. They are bad mofos.
Yeah, and you flew one too.
Yeah.
The audience knows. Talking about this.
Yeah. Just in case you guys forgot, I flew one.
And successfully flew. Fine. That's pretty much the only thing that I worry about. Like if my bird flies down on the ground and like starts messing with a coyote and gets killed, like, all right, she deserves that. But like the owl is like the only thing I'm concerned about at night, pretty much. It's the great horned. There's really nothing else. I've had a couple birds too heavy, like we discussed, and it was too late, and I waited too long to go find the bird. And it's like it's still light out, they can see, but like once a bird goes into roost mode, I've noticed that they're just done. They're in roost mode. They're not moving. Yeah. They're not coming down. I was taking pheasant and launching them up in front of my bird's face, and it was just like with a foot up, just staring straight ahead like a robot, not coming down.
Foot out like that.
Yeah, just hanging out up there, and I could watch it. I set up giant, big lights and stuff in my neighbor's yard. She didn't even go there. I snuck in like a baby seal. I have like lights going on back there, and then I was like thinking, what if I put like a freaking disco ball like under the tree, like, and like and like with that protector from like owls, like just like
it might draw them in.
You think they'd be like trying to party and they come in?
They're like, damn, there's a party. Oh shit, there's free food.
Like, where's the Coke, bro? And then they just see my hawk and they just kill it.
I can tell you that about great horned owls is they haven't flown one successfully, as you said. They like to party.
Yeah, they like to party. Yeah.
They do like to party.
Zach, on a previous episode, I was telling the story about me and you. Remember when we were chasing down that one bird when it was getting dark? And it got spooked by, I think, the train, remember? And me and Phil filled with the minivan. And then remember when we got your bird down?
Yeah.
And that owl just like immediately appeared out of nowhere. It was like almost like it was watching us the whole time. Remember that?
Yeah, we went. We were hunting. What were we doing? Ducks by you.
Ducks, yeah.
And then the train came through, and the bird actually did really well to where she only spooked off like a couple of 100 feet. But because of the terrain, we had to take the cars and go all the way around into this cul-de-sac. And I remember we see her off in the distance right before dark, just chasing a squirrel in somebody's backyard in this tiny, like where every house is right next to each other.
Oh, I forgot that. Yeah, I remember she was chasing the squirrel, yeah.
So I remember I'm running over there and I'm blowing the whistle just like an idiot, just woo, woo, woo. And I'm swinging the lure just so desperate, trying to get her back. And she finally comes down in this person's front yard, and we stand back, and all of a sudden you just hear something fly over our head, and you see this gray horned owl just like looking down on it. And I was just like, Casey, look at that. And it was just staring like it totally would have if we weren't there.
Oh, yeah. I remember when you were like messing with the bird and clipping it back in and stuff, like that bird was bobbing, and like it was like it wanted to come out of that tree while we were standing there. That bird, if we weren't there, that bird would have been toast 100%.
And it didn't really have that much fear of us, too.
Not at all.
Kind of like waiting for us to step back to go in for it.
Yeah. So like
it was somebody's falconry bird.
Yeah. Aaron was actually like hiding behind one of the houses. When we drove up.
What was that? I was living in Jersey a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago.
Probably 6 years ago? 6 years ago? It was a while ago. That was a while ago. But yeah, so that's cool that you've had a lot of experience with the imprints and then the chamber birds. I've never done a chamber bird. I've just kind of like speculated from a distance, and eventually I'll get one. I just I love imprints for some reason. They're just so fun. I love their rage and their aggression and molding them and shaping them, and it just gets me excited.
I got a question for both you guys. What's the oldest consistently flown imprint that you've ever seen?
Bob Glass, Jersey. I think he flew one. It was like 11 or 12 years old.
Bobby G, my boy Bobby G flew one
Bobby
that long?
G. Shout out to Bobby and his book. He has a really good book. It's called It's called The Red-Tailed Hawk. He wrote it. It's got a bunch of pictures. It's basically his journey with red-tailed hawks over like the last 25, 30 years or something in falconry. It's a great book.
It's called A Journey with Red Tails.
A Journey with Red Tails. Lots of pictures.
Bloop, bloop, bloop.
Boom, buckler. Yeah, so good.
Are we going just by the, like, could it be like an imprint falcon, or is just imprint in general?
Goshawk specifically.
Trying to think. I've seen some old ones in Seth's breeding project, but
well, I think Seth still has his first goshawk.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's flown. I would just make the assumption he hasn't flown it in a long time.
But I don't know. That's kind of hard to say. I know. I'm sure it'll pop up, but I've seen some older ones where, like, I know. What did Paul Leah had a pretty old
passage there.
Yeah, oh, that was a passage though.
Yeah, it was like 13. He flew it for 13 seasons.
Wow. And did he release it, or did it pass away?
No, he released it.
Did he cry?
Probably not.
No,
maybe.
It was kind of like bittersweet, I would think, just being like, especially for a passage goshawk.
If passage goshawks are anything like other passage birds, they get to a point where you're happy to see them go because they've gotten so difficult to work with.
That's what he was starting to experience that for like the last 5 or 6 years, where like late season, that bird would start doing weird stuff. And, I just noticed, and I was like, she's not, because I watched the bird fly my whole life. So I think it was just like a hormonal thing, like with red tails. Like if anyone's flown a red tail for more than like 3 or 4 seasons, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like they just like January, February comes around and they immediately start attacking every other red tail they see whenever you're out hawking. And it's a pain in the ass.
They get real rangy,
real territorial, especially if you go to like fields the bird knows all the time. Then anything that comes into the field is like the whole hunt is ruined because it's going to chase that thing till, God knows when. And, and then it just starts to become irritating. So it's kind of like, at that point,
constantly go and get the bird, and
I've noticed that with my red tails that I flew for extended periods of time, like 3-5 years, they start getting hormonal at that certain time of the season. But the beginning of the season is a blast. But then as it progresses, they start trying to get busy.
Yeah, I had a 2-time intermewed female red tail, and we caught a lot of game. But then the last season, she ended up, there was a soaring red tail, and she ended up going up with it, and they just kind of did just like they would grab each other and like bind, and it was just at that point I was like, it was January, and we were just she pretty much did that for the rest of the season, and it was still a fun season. But at that point, I was like, I should probably just let this bird go and do its own thing out there.
Yeah, that's the beauty of falconry in the United States, is we get to release birds and then
those birds you release are awesome. They do really well.
They gotta be, man. There's no way. Just like logic, you can't give a bird that much experience with no repercussions, and then gain all of that experience. I mean, a red tail's not catching 6, 7, 8 rabbits a week. You know what I mean? Like, it's not happening. And you're putting all those slips. It's learning all those skills.
Better diet,
health, and then you're releasing it when it's completely self-sufficient. There's no way that bird's not gonna, and then just flies across the road and gets nailed by a bus or something.
Lands on a telephone pole.
Lands on a pole and just gets fried. Yeah.
Like how I call it a telephone pole. It's probably not telephone wires anymore. It's a power line.
That's a good.
He lands on top of a phone booth.
That's a good discussion about power lines, because I had this discussion with Olivia Steele. She's from Germany. She recently came to the United States, and she flies red tails. And me and her were having a discussion about this, because my birds land on those. When I think of power lines, I think of those big 3-wire giant scaffolding, like power line cuts through like mountains and stuff like that. And I mean, your bird can land on those with no problem.
Yeah.
But she had a red tail that would land on it and then get like zapped. It wouldn't die, but it would get zapped. And we were trying to figure out why her bird was getting zapped and why mine, not that she was asking my opinion, she's got a tremendous amount of experience. But what I came to, my conclusion was that she was running leg mount transmit. And I think that wire touching the pole, the wire was creating some sort of a circuit. And my birds are all tail mount, so I never had anything like that ever.
I'll tell you this: if it's misty out, if it's wet, it will buzz them.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, I fly a lot of spots that are cutovers like that. There's usually rabbits in those.
Always rabbits in those things.
And the only thing is the wild red tails can just sit up there above them and just, drill the rabbits from up above pretty easily. But yeah. I've been out on like misty, foggy days, and the birds that they could land on it all the time, on that day, they go to land and you'll literally hear a buzz and they jump off of it real quick. Like, it doesn't hurt them, but they get off. They don't like it.
Dude, yeah. Zach, that spot in Route 80, you can hear that thing buzzing while we're underneath it.
I always get so nervous because like I see him go up there and I'm just like, is today going to be the day because I'm like, whenever they go near it or, they're going to like look to land on it, I'm like, you don't know, like none of us are really electrical experts here. You don't know if something might out of your control might just cause it to spark up or, so it's like, it's kind of scary, especially like how many power lines there are like all over the country. Like you even go out west of Kansas and like there's no trees around, but and there's only like power lines, running. So especially those, like what Aaron said, those telephone wires or anything like that, they like, it's just kind of scary how many of those are just in a quick moment, just have your bird dead.
Speaking of birds getting killed by power lines, I had a bird get killed by a power line, and I kind of dropped the ball. I didn't follow through with it. I'm busy and I don't have time for this. But a gentleman out in California his bird got fried by a power line, and he was actually able, just for the listeners to know, he has a whole not a formula, but he created like a slideshow. Basically, the power line companies in today's age, they are required to make the power line safe for birds to sit on. So he lost like a $4,000 goshawk to a power line, and he was actually able to recoup the money plus the time he invested in the bird to train it, and the power line company cut him a check.
Wow.
Because he was because he was able to prove that the power line did not meet certain standards of the current regulations, and they didn't update that pole, and there was no need for his bird to die that way. He actually recouped his money. So that's just another pro tip.
That's a pro tip
for the listeners.
We're gonna have to put out a book one day. Sporting Chance pro tips.
Pro tips, and they're not our pro tips necessarily. They're pro tips from our guests that have more experience and insight than we do. So that's another thing. Aaron, do you have any direction you want to go? I have a couple things that I got locked and loaded.
Yeah, I do want to ask. I want to ask. We're going to do something a little different here.
Take your clothes off, Zach. Let's get a look at you.
I want to ask Zach. How this makes him feel.
What is that? A crocodile? What's in his mouth? A zebra?
Crocodile with a zebra in its mouth. That's insane. That's
I want to see it before where it got it. That's a pretty awesome pick there.
I was telling Casey earlier, this is like my favorite pick of wildlife ever. Is this so for the listeners? It's a Nile crocodile, and he is like his neck and his head are fully out of the water, and he's got a zebra's head. He's just like a decapitated zebra head in his mouth. So I encourage you to go ahead and Google Nile crocodile zebra head.
Yeah. That's a great picture.
Could you imagine like living up the road and be like, oh, you got to go wash clothes now in the same like 15 feet from that thing?
Yeah, you gotta go collect water and put it on your head and walk back to your village. Yes.
Yeah. Like I'm not going in that river. Look at that.
Yeah. Well, that's why the women do it over there.
Yeah.
Stupid.
The end of this podcast.
Yeah.
So I watch it, and it's easy for us to say this because we're sitting in America with we flush clean drinking water down the toilet, literally. But you always wonder why they don't have something set up where it's they have the water. They have like a very small, like almost like creek dug out from the river that a crocodile couldn't possibly hide in.
No, they do. They have what they do is they submerge big tree trunks and big thick sticks, and they braid a little fence like into a shallow area of the river to shield them from the crocodiles. You never seen that, Aaron?
Yeah, but what's to stop a crocodile from just like in the middle of the night getting in there?
I don't think they make it big enough where a crocodile of that size that we're looking at currently at the picture could actually be in there without being seen.
Which is like a little half moon thing, like netting on the bank, and then they just like it's maybe like 5 feet across, and it's able them to just go in and scoop it and walk out of there without getting
without getting sucked under the water and eaten alive.
Yeah, can you imagine? Like,
I mean, they do that in like Florida and stuff, don't they? They put like fences to keep
for swimming, for people to swim.
For swimming, yeah.
It's interesting. Alligators just really aren't that dangerous. They're fully capable of killing somebody, but there's something about their psyche that they're just not terribly interested in eating people.
They're the puppy dogs of the crocodilian world.
Well, don't we have American crocodiles?
We do down in very southern Florida, and actually they are pretty docile too. They are not. I don't think an American crocodile has ever killed a human in America.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, I've been kayaking in the Everglades and kayaking in the areas that the crocodiles were in. We actually had a pretty scary circumstance. We were going through this really narrow little canal, and the banks were all really high over our heads. that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm seeing what the picture.
So the banks were extremely steep, and they were all over our heads. So we're canoeing down this really narrow little canal, and then we hear this crashing and thrashing up above us, and all of a sudden, this big American crocodile dives in the water in front of the canoe up there.
Yeah,
Probably like 10 feet from the canoe, like so much that the canoe was like rocking back and forth. And just imagine, like, what if he accidentally dove into the canoe? We would have been screwed.
Or what if he accidentally pulled you out and ate you?
Yeah. My brother was he scuba dives off the Jersey coast, and he was in Shark River scuba diving, and they all go in at night.
Oh, that's nice.
And
Casey's worst nightmare.
He goes in, and they have these very powerful flashlights that shine underwater, and you shine your light on the fish, and then you pretty much swim up to them and you stab them in the head, and you put them in this bag where you keep all your fish, so the fish can't get out of the bag, and you know
that attracts.
Yeah, that's good for you're chumming the water behind you. So he's swimming along, and you kind of get this sense when somebody's watching you, and you're not like can't see him, and he turns around, and there's a Nerf shark, a 5-foot Nerf shark, just chomping on the bag.
That's nice. That's nice. You're so in Jersey you can scuba dive and spearfish? I thought like you have to have no supplemental oxygen to spearfish in most places.
No, you can. You do it in the ocean. So and guys do it. It's pretty common in Shark River, but it's it's nothing like it's much more of a tough scuba diving with less visibility than you would do in the Caribbean or something like that. And there are boats out there that drive over the top of you, so it's
that sounds scary.
Let's not go into Shark River at night with flashlights.
Yeah.
Hey, isn't that where Jaws, like the actual inspiration for Jaws, happened?
I think so. It was right around there in Manasquan. So that
it was a bull shark, right?
Yeah, because they're able to. So I mean, the bull shark could have been in this river too. So,
dude, bull sharks are everywhere. I think they're in my pond in my backyard. They, bull sharks. I remember just a funny, hilarious story. We used to go to the Jersey Shore, and we'd stay at my uncle's house. He had like a house on a lagoon, and this guy would go in there every night and do laps in the lagoon. And I just thought it was like the most insane thing in my life, watching this guy do laps at dusk in the lagoon. And it was just terrifying because there's
like a horrible idea.
It seems like a horrible idea. And he would have his little cap on and his freaking goggles. Like, what do you need the goggles for? You can't see 2 feet in front of you in those.
Cloudy water.
Yeah, my dad didn't like sharks either. Maybe that's where I got it from. He'd always be like, "This guy's freaking crazy. Man. He's freaking bull sharks. This guy's freaking out of his mind. What am I doing with this guy?" That's my dad impersonation.
There's a viral video of this girl fishing at Myrtle Beach, and it's in a little, I don't know, like brackish creek or something near the ocean. And she's like reeling in a snapper or something like that. And then all of a sudden this bull shark just boom comes out of nowhere and grabs it. And she goes, it was a shark. It was a big ass shark.
Was it raining in the video?
Might have been.
I think I've seen that video. Yeah, it's just completely traumatizing and terrifying. You see the video of the guy in the Everglades, and his friend is literally telling him, "Don't." You saw that video? How crazy is that? He's like, "Don't stick your hand in the water." He's like, "What's going to happen? Nothing's going to happen." He goes into like wash his hands off in the water, and a freaking shark latches onto his hand and pulls him in the water.
He had the fish climb on his hands, and he just goes to wipe it off in the water, and that thing must have been right there.
There. You saw that video, Zach? Oh my gosh, that video! I must have watched that video 1,000 times, like under my covers.
You've referenced this video before, but the dude in the plexiglass shark cage out in the ocean.
Would you do that, Casey?
No, I would never do that. You couldn't pay me enough money to do that.
That's bucket list for me.
No.
I want to do that so bad.
I won't even go in the boat because there's a risk that the boat could somehow sink, and then I would be stuck out there and get eaten. There's no way on earth I'm going out there. I don't even want to go tuna fishing
They say in Australia there's just certain places you just don't even go anymore because the sharks are like so, they're just so bad.
It's funny that you bring up Australia because our previous guest was from Australia, and he's a very cool guy, and he actually fishes for sharks off the surf. Super
For
interesting.
research purposes, they tag them. It's pretty cool. Yeah, but to your point, there are a lot of great white sharks in Australia. There's places in northern Australia where saltwater crocodiles are in the ocean, and they straight up say do not swim there because they are common enough to where it's dangerous to swim in the ocean.
You got your bull sharks in the river, then you got your crocodiles in the ocean, and
to stay out of the ocean, to stay out of any salt water.
Stay out of North Australia.
There's a golf course with a big lake in Australia that there's bull sharks in, a landlocked lake.
How they get in there?
They don't know. I would just make an assumption that people probably caught bull sharks and released them in it.
Or there was a big flood or a hurricane and they got washed in there.
That would make some sense too.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Zach, we should put a bull shark in Casey's pond in his backyard.
There's no way. There's no way.
One of those motorized fins back there and getting good one day, and you just like.
I really do. And like when I was young, I didn't like sharks, and I would swim a little when I was younger. And then now, every year going to the beach is just like more and more I don't want to go in the water, and more I'm just like terrified. Even just like swimming around and then like opening my eyes under the water, I just keep expecting to see like just a face of a shark just like rocketing towards me just to freaking rip me apart. I have a fear. We talk about it in like every episode, but I have a fear of sharks.
Yeah, Joe Rogan talks about wolves and grizzlies. We talk about crocodiles and sharks.
Yeah, and elk.
Yeah. I mean, grizzlies too. You're starting to see a lot more people get in trouble with grizzlies because they're doing so well in the lower 48. It's kind of, and that's the thing where like, you think, it's in Alaska and you kind of have to like be more alert in Alaska, but you get a lot of tourists who go up to like Glacier and Yellowstone and they just get in such bad situations because they just, aren't fair aware, or like they just think like the rules don't apply to them. But you hear of fatal maulings all the time up in those two parks.
Yeah.
I was in Alaska for our honeymoon. And
Nice.
I wanted to see a grizzly so bad. Like, of course I did, right? I wanted to see one so bad. And
so bad that I staked my wife out.
I put peanut butter all over my body.
Yeah, and I stood out there.
So we go on this excursion to see, I think it was Mendahall Glacier. And we were walking out to see the glacier. And as we're walking by the creek, there's all these salmon that are half eaten, their heads there. The guide said at a certain point, the grizzlies will just eat a certain part of the salmon because there's so many of them. They're just eating like the choicest cut that they want. And we see the glacier, and then we're on the way back, and there's this big boardwalk near like a pretty fast moving part of the river. And there's real thick vegetation down below, and everybody's crowded around this boardwalk. And I asked somebody what's going on, and they say there's a grizzly bear and her cubs down there. I'm like, why the fuck are you standing on this boardwalk over a mama bear and her cubs? These people all assume they're safe because they're in a park. Like, I saw it firsthand. You see like the videos of people trying to pet a bison at Yellowstone.
Yeah,
it's like as soon as you walk through a park, like people just immediately switch to like amusement park or zoo.
Yeah.
They forget there's real danger there. And yeah, the odds of you getting attacked by the grizzly bear when there's a sea of 100 people there is pretty low, but still. I don't want no part of that.
There was a viral video of this guy camping out, and I think it was Yellowstone or Glacier, one of those two, and he opens up his tent flap right before dark, and there's a grizzly like 5 feet away, and it's like,
oh, I saw that.
And the guy closes his tent flap like it's going to do something when that bear comes through.
It's better than nothing. I'm with him on that. I'd close that flap too.
Yeah, like that's going to do something.
I'm scared. Yeah. I am scared of grizzlies. I'd be pretty nervous hiking around or camping in grizzly territory.
Dude, I get a little nervous. Like today I was getting the bird from Hack. Not when I picked the bird up, but when I dropped it off in the morning at 7 a.m, it's like perfectly still. And the listeners know I've talked about it a million times. There's like a bazillion bears where I live. And yeah, they're black bears, but I'm thinking while I'm out there, I'm like sitting on the ground watching her take a bath, and I'm like, I wonder if there's a freaking bear around here. And
They
I get
still
a
kill
little,
people.
oh yeah, and they'll actually like target them, where a grizzly more likely will just maul you, kind of leave you, because you surprise them or you threaten them or whatever. But a black bear will actually eat you, feed on you. Like,
Yeah, and it's crazy to see, especially in New Jersey, to where they'll be, they'll knock over your garbage can and they'll be like 5 feet from your front porch. And to them, that garbage can is like a kill. It's like a deer for them because they think it's a food source. So they're going to protect that food source.
Yeah.
And you're just trying to run that bear off, and all of a sudden that bear is holding its ground.
Zach, you had a good story coming home with your fiance, and was the bear would not like I told you should have put a bullet in it.
So
Remember
I
that?
had my garbage can isn't far from my front porch. So I Mary Kate was outside and it was probably around like 11 o'clock at night, and she comes in and maybe like 5-10 minutes go by and you just hear a huge crash, and I go outside and there's probably 300-400 pound bear just standing there looking at me, and I do
Jeez.
the regular routine. Come on, here, bear, out, bear, let's go, move it. And it starts chomping its teeth and does one of those, when it's like aggressive growls.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that was the first time I've ever had a black bear just refuse to, just hold its ground and been like, no, like, and so I was
Fight
just,
me.
yeah. And I was just like, I was almost like, oh, yeah, like I've never had that happen before. And so I ended up, I didn't have bear mace and I didn't want to shoot it because they just, if you shoot a bear like that out of season, you better have like, they just look to crucify people like
Yeah, it has to. The bear essentially has to like rip your throat out and like have you eaten, and then you can put a bullet in it, and then they'd be like, "Oh, okay, that was a justified shooting," as you're like gushing blood from your freaking throat. Actually, it's not really the throat. They usually eat you ass first, so they'll probably have like your intestines pulled out, and then you got to pull a bullet in it, and then it's like then you can shoot it. It's ridiculous. It's like. You know what I mean? I got kids and stuff. It's crazy. If I got a bear that's acting like that, I mean, I'm not saying I would do that. I love my falconer license too much to justify to risk doing something like that. But I mean, I've had bears where I'm freaking screaming at them. I throw a freaking work boot at them, and they freaking just kind of casually walk off into the woods by my house after they just rip my garbage apart. And I'm like, dude, what if my wife is like going out to her car to get something, and this thing's like just sitting there, and it just decided like that bear that by your house just decides it's not going to leave and it's going to defend that garbage can. You know what I mean? I got to find a new wife. It's freaking too hard.
I think they just get so used to people and they get so used to being around people and getting their food around people that they just like kind of treat it like another bear. And when you get a bigger bear, they're not going to back down. And in this situation, I ended up hopping in my RAV4 and, started to drive towards it and high beaming it. And I think it slowly ran off with that. But it was, yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy to see how suburban bears don't really have that much fear of people.
Yeah, it's not good, man. Especially where me and you live. You live about an hour from me, and you have the same problem I have. We're in like the same horizontal plane of like bear activity, and it's just like incredible how many we have. But speaking of bears, you have another good story. You didn't see any bears. You saw some bear sign. But you spent a couple of nights sleeping in a tree in Glacier National Park.
Yeah. So
so you were sleeping in grizzly territory.
Oh, absolutely. So when I was younger, my dad, we had a small Winnebago. We used to pack up and travel the whole month of August out west. So I was in 6th grade and we drove out to Glacier National Park, and we ended up getting a camping spot last minute, which was extremely lucky because they fill up so quickly. And I remember they had all these signs all over the place because 2 weeks ago they had a fatal grizzly mauling, and like they came in, like they handed you this pamphlet at when you first walked in, saying this happened, be aware, be extra cautious. And so we ended up, we get there, we get all settled in, and I end up going to look for firewood and get turned around. And then 1 hour turns into 4 hours turns into 8 hours turns into 12. Next thing I know, it's like 11 o'clock. I have no idea where I'm at. I'm sixth grade, trying to remember every survival lesson I ever learned. And I remember I had this $5 Walmart hatchet at the time. And so I ended up, there was this pine tree, and it really started to get scary once I started seeing grizzly like paw prints the size of my hand, and they were just like, and I was just like really starting to panic at that point. And so I remember I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll climb a tree and like thinking, how am I going to be like, because I needed to sleep soon. So I'm like, how am I going to set myself up in a safe situation where like a grizzly's not going to be able to get me. So at that time, like I thought if I climbed the tree, it might help. I might be able to see it or hear it coming first. And so I climbed this tree, and I'm like probably like maybe 10, 12 feet up in the tree. Well, I didn't know if you're sleeping in the tree, you don't really hang on when you're sleeping. Or so you got to kind of like tie yourself with a rope to the tree. So it's probably around 3 a.m. Finally fall asleep. The next thing I know, I'm just falling out of the tree and I'm hitting every branch on the way down. And I just smack into 3 or 4 branches on the way down. And I remember landing on the ground feeling so defeated. And I was just like,
God.
at that point, I just realized I'm just going to sleep there till I wake up. And if a grizzly gets me, that's God's will, because I was so tired at that point. And so the next morning goes and I wake up and I immediately just like no compass, no direction, no cell phone. So I just started heading towards where I thought might be the best bet. And so I go the rest of the day, and right around dark, I ended up making it to a road and finding someone to give me a ride back to the campsite. And I had my parents' number memorized. So it was almost 2 full days here. And I'm thinking, they got rangers looking for me. They got this whole search and rescue, like in the movies. Like, oh my God, they're going to be so excited when I get back. That super blanket. And so I call my dad, and he picks up, and he was like, "Where are you?" And just like so calm. And I'm like, "Oh, like I'm going to get a ride back." And I get back to the gate, and everything's dark. And I'm like, "Where's search parties and all that?" My parents ended up calling nobody. They just figured I would return eventually. And there was no alert, no warden searching for me, no park service, nothing. And so my dad walks down with a half broken flashlight with it's flickering, and he walks to the gate, because the people who picked me up couldn't even drop me off at the campsite because they close the gate at night so campers can't get in and out. And so he meets me at the gate, just him alone, and the flashlight barely works. And I remember I just wanted to be in light, because I would have felt like I just wanted some light so I could see in the dark. And
you're traumatized.
Yeah, and
So some light.
I remember he yelled at me when I came back. He was just like, "Your mom's been drinking, great," and so so I start walking back. Like, "You really did it now, huh? Couldn't just turn around and find your way back?" And I remember, to make a traumatic experience worse, I was just getting yelled at for
you piece of shit. You made I'm not getting anything.
Yeah, and I remember I was thinking this whole time, and I'm like, what happens if these people don't drive me back to my parents? Is this going to be like a Joe Dirt scenario?
Yeah, what if the guy just took you to his house and put the lotion in the skin?
I know that. So that's what was going through my mind. But I'm like, I got to pick my poison at this point. So, and make it back to the campsite, because I haven't really eaten or drank anything in almost a full 2 days. So
that's crazy. Oh my God.
But yeah.
How long did you sleep after that?
Probably a good 16, 18 hours. So it was I was just, it was more of my throat was so dry from not having to drink anything. And then I had all these cuts and scrapes from falling out of the tree. And But the scariest thing was when I saw those grizzly paw prints, because like most people don't realize how big those freaking bears are until like you see a paw print and you hold your hand next to it and it's like, so
Mm.
yeah,
That's scary.
that was a crazy experience. And, my dad's reaction at the end made it all the better.
Yeah. Your dad's a hard ass, it sounds like. He's
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of just gave me shit for making my mom upset. So
it was your fault.
yeah.
Son of a bitch. You got lost.
Yeah, I was thinking there would be a search party and they would have like water and drinks already set up for me, and they would be like the newsreel, and it would it would be all this thing, and he just comes out and he's just like
Little Zachy Bohn lost in the woods.
Yeah.
Found after 2 days, a miracle story, and then he's just like, the hell, where you been?
And like you said, you didn't even get your silver blanket, man.
No, I didn't. I remember I didn't even get to shower. The shower's like, so like it was hell of a story too.
That's crazy, man. I'd much rather deal with a bear than deal with a shark, but that is super sketchy.
I would.
Yeah, I would. Did you have a belt on? I would have put a belt. I would have tried to strap myself into the tree with a belt somehow.
No, I don't even think I didn't have a belt on. Remember how it was such a long time ago. Cargo shorts were so big back then, and I remember I was stuffing stuff into my cargo shorts that I thought I could use later to throw at a bear if it was coming towards me. So I finally get back, and my mom's doing laundry, and there's all these pine cones and rocks in the cargo shorts. Like
that's what cargo shorts were made for.
Yeah,
bear defense.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Were those
That's
American Eagle cargo shorts?
Oh, absolutely. From the place in the mall too, with the Abercrombie.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, you go in there and you come out just smelling like Abercrombie cologne afterwards.
Yeah, with the Hollister, with the polos.
Yeah, Hollister, I was like normally I was like a large. And then if you wanted to get a shirt at Hollister, you had to get like a triple X for it to fit normally.
Yeah.
You weren't like a surfer shredded dude. Like
yes, I just bought a new Carhartt shirt, and I normally wear XL t-shirts. Dude, I ordered an XL Carhartt t-shirt, and I look like freaking Jelly Roll wearing that thing. It's like a dress on me, man.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, Carhartt one's big for sure. They're huge.
It's just it's so hit or miss with Carhartt. But so, Zach, I feel like there's a lot we could hit on, and we just barely scraped the surface on a lot of things. And I got a feeling you'll be back. Is there anything else that you need to get off your chest while you're here?
Just that I really appreciate you guys doing this podcast, man. Like, and I think one of the messages you guys sent forth that was really resonated with me is that, there is a lot of opposition against us that's more, that has a lot more money to throw at if somebody did catch on, wanted to get rid of falconry forever or wanted to get rid of trapping forever, that if these people, how much money PETA or, the animal rights associations have coming in every month through donations and celebrities and all that if they really wanted to get rid of us, they could. So I think what you guys were saying, where, trappers have to support bow hunters have to support fly fishermen. I think, it's not just one group, versus another. I think we all kind of have to realize that, like we're all trying to do the same thing, where we're all trying to explore and enjoy the outdoors in our own different little way. So I think the message that you guys send, where we all kind of have to band together and support each other and appreciate each other's, what they're doing and what they're trying to do and how they're trying to help. I think that's such an important message that you guys send. So I really appreciate that. Because I grew up, I got into falconry a little bit later in life, but so I grew up trapping, deer hunting, bird hunting, and it was kind of the same way where you had, bow hunters getting mad at, bird hunters for ruining their hunts and all that, and trappers. And so I think if every group of hunters and fishermen learn to just support each other.
What are you doing, a baggie during the podcast?
Yeah, dude.
The dogs are just being so ridiculous right now. I've been trying so hard to keep them quiet, and of course they can't. But I really appreciate that message that you guys are trying to send. So,
well,
good, man.
Thank
appreciate
you for the kind words.
Thank you for the kind words. Just like we rehearsed, we appreciate it.
Yeah, you followed the script to a T. Thank you.
No, we appreciate it. In all seriousness, we appreciate it. Yeah, we're trying.
Where can people find you?
At Hawks and Hounds Falconry on Instagram, and I'm actually, I think you guys touched base on this, is posting more, and there's so many cool things that we do, and so this year I'm going to definitely try and post more, and just show what I do in a positive light, because I think it's be something that people find really interesting, because I post more on the trap line, post more of fishing, post more of flying the goshawk, and I think so I'm going to really try and do that, and really just show people. But like Casey kind of said, is like that's the thing I could really appreciate what Casey does, is because that whole how Casey grew his Instagram page is like, it's almost like a side job, because there's a lot of work that goes into editing those videos and posting, and it's not as easy as it just kind of looks,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's all for the greater good, because in my personal opinion, the more that we put falconry out in a positive light, the more we get a chance to interact with the general public, and maybe sway some people's minds and some of their thoughts that they may have had before seeing a page like like mine or some other people. And it can really help to make the difference if it were to come down to that situation where there was some sort of a petition to get falconry outlawed. I mean, I know a bunch of random plumbers and people that the only reason why they know what falconry is because they heard about it, because I'm a plumber, and they seen it, and they know that it's actually a good thing. It's good for the ecosystem. We're not harming any populations in any way, and it's all for the love of the animals and the birds, and they're doing their natural thing, and it won't be just this evil, vilified thing that the anti-hunters and the Audubon Society tries to perpetuate. You know what I mean? So, yeah, man, post away.
Yeah, I think if you're doing good falconry, you need to share it with people.
Yeah, if you're doing crappy falconry,
keep it to yourself.
Keep it to yourself.
Exactly. So, but yeah, and just think of kind of, and so just think of is this a video that you're going to want people to see in 10 years from now? And, that's kind of the message, kind of, just a positive light of what we do. Because so many of my friends will come up to me, I'll see them, just along my travels in like a Rite Aid or somewhere like that. And they'll mention, Casey's Instagram page, and they'll be like, that's so cool. Some of the videos you guys post, and, and I go, oh yeah. And I always tell people to follow NJ Falconry. So keep up the good work.
He's
Casey.
A big celeb.
No, yeah. You should, you should build your page, because you do cooler stuff than me. You trap, you tan. You're going to become the Sporting Chance trapping
correspondent.
Because you're anything that I have questions about in terms of trapping, you know the answer, you know how to get it done, and yeah, you got a lot more outdoor experience than I do in my.
And trapping such a pivotal part of wildlife management that it's like and it's something that's kind of like slipping away, and where a lot of people don't do it anymore because it takes so much time, and because the fur really isn't worth that much anymore, that you see people kind of like lose interest in it. But it's something that's so necessary to the natural order of things in wildlife in general, because managing some of those foxes, raccoons, coyotes, beaver, otter is such a important thing to the ecosystem. And I would say trappers have some of the most important wildlife management jobs out there, and they're kind of like the unsung heroes of
100%.
the outdoor world.
I agree 100%. It's this, unfortunately, we live in a time now, and the argument that everybody likes to bring up is, oh, why can't you just let nature manage itself? And it's like, well, if you're chopping down trees and bulldozing farms and putting in condos and people from the city are moving there, it creates this unnatural situation where certain meso predators get a chance to, their populations can explode without being checked, and then they can decimate other species that are more fragile, like ground nesting birds and stuff like that. So if you're not removing them, then you're going to have an uneven balance, and then you could possibly harm other species by not managing those other species. So yeah, I actually, when they came to do my muse inspection, the woman that came to do it, she actually is like in charge of like the hunter education course and the trapping course. So she sent me, as soon as I said I would like to get my trapping license for New York, like literally like 2 days later, I had like this giant packet, handwritten note on how to get it done. Like, you can tell that they want more trappers to get involved. And as soon as I mentioned it, she jumped on it and sent me everything. So I'm going to probably get my trapper's license, and Zach, you can teach me a thing or two about harvesting some of these fur bearers, because it does make a difference. And all it takes is one raccoon to raid an entire, mallard nest on the ground, and it's over. Or a turkey, which are more fragile than the ducks in reality. And it's a huge problem that we have to manage.
Well, to your point, Casey, people forget we're animals, and we've basically taken the alpha predator out of the food chain.
Yeah.
When all we do is grocery shop.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
And so you see, as far as I think one of the aspects of it is trappers know the most about the animals they trap, more than they're so, because every day they're thinking like that animal, and they're like, where is this animal going and why is it going there? That's what I was always taught when I'm looking for a new spot to set up in. I was always taught to think like an animal. And so I feel like trappers kind of understand, the animals and respect the animals that they trap, kind of almost, the most out of the outdoor community, because if you didn't know so much about the animal, you wouldn't be a good trapper.
100%, man. It's like they try to vilify trappers and like, oh, you just put out a snare or a leg hold, and you just get the animal. It's like, so, like, you know how hard it is to get a fox or a coyote to step in a 3x3 leg hold trap exactly where you want it to step? Like, it takes so much skill to do that, to understand how they're moving on the landscape, to predict where they're going to be, and then set up a set in order to trap at least one of them that is moving through that landscape. So it's just like, trappers are like, they're like superheroes, man. They're like celebrities. They know the ins and outs of animal behavior. I think anybody that traps can easily hunt, and anybody that can hunt can easily fish. But anybody that can fish or hunt with a gun can't translate backwards. The trappers are like, in my opinion, they're like the highest level of outdoor endeavors, being a trapper, in my opinion.
Exactly. And I think those guys, they kind of they really understand how things work, and it's almost like, they have such fine-tuned skills, because then it goes into trapping, then it goes into fur handling, and then the bonuses of trapping are just so much out there. The guy who I actually get the muskrats from, he bought a cabin in upstate New York, and he does fisher and everything like that. And how many goshawks nests have you seen raided by fishers, and they're just wiped out
completely? They'll kill the parents, they'll kill the young. Fishers are a huge problem, and if you're not trapping them, you're not managing the population. Now it's directly impacting one of the most incredible bird species that we use in falconry.
This podcast has been called a goshawk circle jerk. So yeah,
whatever.
We're very passionate about protecting them.
100%, man, and we should be. And if you're not, even if you don't fly one, and you have an opinion about them that like, oh, I don't know why everybody cares so much. Like they're a very fragile resource that we have to fly goshawks in the United States.
England, they've been completely extirpated. That's a hard word for me to say. But historically, I think goshawks nest there now, but there was a point in time where goshawks were extinct in England.
Yeah.
And that's probably through humans, and I'm sure their natural predators there didn't. So yeah, we've disrupted nature enough. We are predators. We have to play that role. In this world.
100%.
Yeah,
in a perfect world, everything would be cyclical, right? If that's the correct word, where everything would go up and down and it would kind of balance itself. But in certain areas, like especially, where we live on the East Coast, where it's a little bit more dense and there's people everywhere. I mean, a raccoon will live in somebody's shed, or barn just as easy. You know what I mean? There's only a certain number of hollow trees where they can live and breed in real wild situations. They have an unfair advantage over other species. So there has to be some sort of management there.
Exactly. And you talk about human interference too, is especially why we have to manage some of the other predators. Because, you'll have a goshawk who sets up his nest, and then, 2 years from then, a logging company will come and destroy that whole patch of woods. And then that goshawk moves over and sets up a nest somewhere else. And then a fisher comes in and kills everything, and it's somebody, and it's very easy for, you're seeing goshawks where, Pennsylvania just closed down, the right to trap them. And you're seeing, people, I'm not saying whether it is or not, where, their populations are dwindling, but they need every available help they can get to make sure they, we keep it the way it is to where we are able to enjoy wild take of them and make sure that their numbers don't crash and that we're able to give them every little bit of help we can. And I think that's our responsibilities as, humans. We're stewards of the forest.
Correct.
Well said.
Couldn't agree more. I think that's a good place to wrap it. I think we covered a lot. That was great, Zach. Well said.
Yeah. Thank you, Zach.
Yep. Thank you guys. And thanks again for everything. And good luck in the future with your podcast.
Thanks,
you, bro. Appreciate
All right,
it.
everybody. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, leave a 5-star review. That's the most helpful thing you could do. If you leave a 5-star review, screenshot it, send it to the Sporting Chance on Instagram or New Jersey Falconry. He's our social media manager. And we'll send you a free sticker for a 5-star review.
Nice.
That's a good deal.
Can't beat
Let's do it. Well, thanks everybody. We appreciate it.
Thank you guys.